So this is going to be a very interesting one today. Last week and the week prior, we looked at the history of philosophy. Now, as we dive into the secret teachings of all ages, we're going to be looking at the hidden history of secret societies. And many people have heard about secret societies, but they really have no idea what they are, or what they do, or what they are about. Now, as we look at the hidden history of ancient secret societies, we're going to be able to uncover that and see that very much of it has to do with symbolism. These secret societies embed their hidden teachings and hidden messages in symbols. And they do this so that those with the eyes to see will be able to understand the hidden message within the symbols, but then the ignorant masses will just sort of take the symbol at face value and not really think twice about it. Now, you can see this everywhere, even today. For example, think about the dollar bill. On the dollar bill is the pyramid with the all-seeing eye. That is a deeply esoteric symbol with a hidden message. And for those with the eyes to see, understand what that message is. But guess what? The vast majority of the population, do they even give it a second thought? Do they even question it? No, they just go, oh, weird, there's a pyramid on the dollar bill. I get, yeah, who cares? And let me go buy my, well, you can't get much with a dollar, but you know what I mean. People don't question things. People don't, the masses don't look for the hidden message embedded within the symbols. And these symbols are everywhere, all over the place, because there are, this is still happening today. But today we're going to look at the hidden history of ancient secret societies and see how this has evolved in the past. Just like previously, we looked at the history of thought with regard to philosophy. Now we're going to start doing the same thing, but with regard to secret societies. And secret societies is going to be all about symbolism. And I want to show you, we are reading from the Secret Teachings of All Ages, and this is the part where we will be starting on. You can see the lovely image here, and this is the page. Now, this is broken up into 3 parts, so I don't know how much we're going to get to or how much we're going to be able to do tonight, but we'll see. This is a 3-parter, at least in the book. We'll see if we can fit in 1 video or 2 videos or 3 videos. I don't know, but we are going to get started. By the way, I have to tell you guys, it's December, and on Christmas Eve, that's December 24th, Christmas Eve, we're going to have an amazing anti-Christmas drunk Bible reading, and I have some crazy things planned for it. Seriously, there's a couple things that I'm really hesitant to do, but it's going to be good. So mark your calendars. It's Christmas Eve, December 24th. Spend anti-Christmas with us live, 4 p.m. Pacific time, December 24th, and for a really going to be a crazy drunk Bible stream. Probably the craziest stream that we've done yet. So it's going to be good. Make sure you are there. So we're going to get started reading the Ancient Mysteries and Secret Societies. When confronted with a problem involving the use of the reasoning faculties, individuals of strong intellect keep their poise and seek to reach a solution by obtaining facts bearing upon the question. Those of immature mentality, on the other hand, when similarly confronted, are overwhelmed. When the former may be qualified to solve the riddle of their own destiny, the latter must be led like a flock of sheep and taught in simple language. They depend almost entirely upon the ministrations of the shepherd. The Apostle Paul said that these little ones must be fed with milk, but that meat is the food of the strong men. Thoughtlessness is almost synonymous with childishness, while thoughtfulness is symbolic of maturity. So basically it's saying that those who are intelligent seek to use their reasoning faculties, their faculties of reason, to understand reality, while the ignorant masses are overwhelmed and they're confused and need to be taught in simple language. And what it means by, meat for babes milk for babes and meat for strong men is basically very, very simplistic, symbolic ideas for the uninitiated, and then the more advanced ideas for the intelligent. Now, and people have to be led like a sheep like sheep. Now, I want to say that we're taking a look at the history of secret societies and seeing how secret societies work. Now, I want to say that I am opposed to this mentality and this way of thinking. Basically, what Hyperianism intends to do is to raise up the level of everybody. And you have this very old world order mindset that many secret societies have, in which certain information is reserved for the so-called elect, and the masses get a watered down version of it. And this is where a lot of dangerous religions begin, because you have religions which are sort of created in a certain way to try and teach the masses in a very simplistic way. But look at the disasters that arise from that. People take the religions as literal, and then you get war and you get bloodshed and people fighting over, whose sky daddy is the best. And so I want to emphasize here that, this idea about sort of leading humanity like a flock of sheep is an idea that Hyperianism is against. Instead, we want to raise up everyone to be able to be guided and autonomous and self-determined, self-guided and self-determined, while operating within a collective. So whereas, sort of the old world order, the controllers of this world use a shepherd and sheep mentality, right? They look at themselves as the shepherd, and then the rest of the world as the ignorant sheep to lead. That's the old world order, the controllers of the world. That's how they think. We, as Hyperians, don't use a shepherd and sheep metaphor. We use a wolf metaphor, because wolves are strong, independent, and autonomous and powerful, but also work best in a pack, in a collective, and in a group. And so we don't want sheep and we don't want shepherds to lead sheep. We want everyone to raise themselves up to the level of wolves and exist together within a strong pack. So you're going to see this huge difference in the mentality and the thinking of sort of this old world order mindset that's very negative compared to the Hyperion mindset of bringing everyone up. Instead of trying to keep everyone at a lower level and leading them around like sheep, we want to raise everyone up. There are, however, but few mature minds in the world. This is true. There are few mature minds in the world, very, very few, but we wish to change that, which is why education is crucial. We are a revolution of the mind. That's why, as a revolution of the mind, a revolution of consciousness, education is key and core to Hyperianism, because it's true, there are few mature minds in this world, but we want to raise everyone up to that level, to bring them into absolute awareness, not this simplistic self-awareness that humans barely have, but to a Hyperion absolute awareness, reflecting our triadic perspectives of the absolute, monadic, and avatar. So there are, however, but few mature minds in the world, and thus it was that the philosophic religious doctrines of the pagans were divided to meet the needs of these two fundamental groups of human intellect. One philosophic, the other incapable of appreciation the deeper mysteries of life. To the discerning few were revealed the esoteric having to do with hidden. To the discerning few were revealed the esoteric or spiritual teachings, while the unqualified many received only the literal or exoteric interpretations. Exoteric meaning revealed, having to do with what is revealed. So you have esoteric, hidden, the secret message, and then the exoteric, the revealed message for the masses. In order to make this simple, the great truths of nature and the abstract principles of natural law, the vital forces of the universe were personified, becoming the gods and goddesses of the ancient mythologies. While the ignorant multitudes brought their offerings to the altars of Priapus and Pan, deities representing the procreative energies, the wise recognized in these marble statues only symbolic concretions of great abstract truths. So, you can see that then these mythologies were constructed, where they created gods and goddesses, but what these gods and goddesses represented were laws of nature or universal laws of the mind, such as archetypes. So these gods and goddesses were symbols and metaphors for laws of nature or inner laws, laws of the mind, the unconscious, archetypes. And so you had these stories whereby the intelligent would see the hidden message, but then the ignorant masses would take it to be literal. And that's why it says, while the ignorant multitudes brought their offerings to the altars of Priapus and Pan, so the ignorant multitudes took these gods, such as Pan, to be real and would bring them offerings. The wise recognized within them that they weren't real, that they were just symbolic concretions of great abstract truths, such as universal principles, hidden, of the mind or of the natural world. And and I want to emphasize why this leads to disaster. So you can see this leads to disaster because when you take, these are how these religions, dangerous religions began, because people took them as literal and then started having wars with each other, which was, and look at today. Look how many people still worship God and Jesus Christ when they are symbols, when they are symbolic. We can have the esoteric Gnostic and Hegelian interpretation of Jesus Christ, meaning as God incarnate, as we all are God incarnate. We are all Christs when we recognize that we are God. That's what it means for God to be on earth, is when we look inside and awaken to absolute awareness and realize that we are God on earth. And that is what Hegel recognized as Jesus Christ being symbolic of. However, guess what? Now you have people who take it literal, and you have people trying to, trying to take LGBTQ rights away, women's rights away, all these ideas, because they believe in a literal Jesus Christ who is going to return in the heavens with the angels. And, do you see the, that conception of Jesus Christ is toxic and disgusting, and we are wholly opposed to mainstream religion. So do you see the danger? Do you see the danger that is revealed, that comes to the forefront when using this technique, which is why it needs to be approached very, very cautiously. So in all cities of the ancient world were temples for public worship and offering. In every community also were philosophers and mystics deeply versed in nature's lore. These individuals were usually banded together, forming seclusive philosophic and religious schools. The most important of these groups were known as the Mysteries. And perhaps you've heard of such as the Eleusinian Mysteries, the Dionysian Mysteries, etc. Many of the great minds of antiquity were initiated into these secret fraternities by strange and mysterious rites, some of which were extremely cruel. Alexander Wilder defines the mysteries as sacred dramas performed at stated periods. The most celebrated were those of Isis, Sabazius, Cybele, and Eleusis. After being admitted, the initiates were instructed in the secret wisdom which had been preserved for ages. Plato, an initiate of one of these sacred orders, was severely criticized because in his writings he revealed to the public many of the secret philosophic principles of the mysteries. And maybe one of these days, one of these live streams, we'll read some of Plato's writings and see where he did talk about the Eleusinian Mysteries, and it's very, very interesting. So every pagan nation had and has not only its state religion, but another into which the philosophic elect alone have gained entrance. Many of these ancient cults vanished from the earth without revealing their secrets, but a few have survived the test of the ages, and their mysterious symbols are still preserved. Much of the rituals of Freemasonry are based on the trials to which candidates were subjected by the ancient hierophants before the keys of wisdom were entrusted to them. Few realize the extent to which the ancient secret schools influence contemporary intellects, and through those minds, posterity. Robert McCoy, 33 Degrees, in his General History of Freemasonry, pays a magnificent tribute to the part played by the ancient mysteries in the rearing of the edifice of human culture. He says in part, "It appears that all the perfection of civilization and all the advancement made in philosophy, science, and art among the ancients are due to those institutions, which, under the veil of mystery, sought to illustrate the sublimest truths of religion, morality, and virtue, and impress them on the hearts of their disciples. Their chief object was to teach the doctrine of one God, the resurrection of man to eternal life, the dignity of the human soul, and to lead the people to see the shadow of the deity in the beauty, magnificence, and splendor of the universe." With the decline of virtue, which has preceded the destruction of every nation of history, the mysteries became perverted. Sorceries took place of the divine magic, indescribable practices such as the bacchanalia were introduced, and perversion ruled supreme. Now let me preface this right now. Now, as I said, Manly P. Hall is an intelligent individual, but I want to make it clear that Manly P. Hall does not reflect our Hyperion system at all. It's a great, it's an interesting codex, compendium, and we can draw information from it, but I want to make it clear that Manly P. Hall does not reflect our mindset. You can see that he already is talking about this sheep and shepherd mentality. We do not have the sheep and shepherd mentality. We have the wolf mentality. Now he's talking about the bacchanalia and it being perverted. Now let me tell you, this is the Dionysian Mysteries, and as you can see, we'll do a live stream about the Dionysian Mysteries at some point. But I want to say that the Dionysian Mysteries are extremely important with regard to Hyperionism. We want to set in our new world, the Hyperion New World Order, we want to set up Dionysian zones across the world. The world led by Apollonian logic and reason, but making room for the shadow of Dionysus, the Dionysian zones. Now, the mysteries of Dionysus were all about experience. So it was all about combining all elements of experience together, including, intoxicants, music, dance, orgy, even pleasure and pain, right? All these different, sexual, intoxicant, music, performance art, all of to take part in all forms of experience at once, to have communion with the God, to feel the God within awakened by all these different experiences. And the Dionysian Mysteries had many female followers, and Dionysus was presented as androgynous, which is a lot different from the other mysteries, which were very masculine. Now, the Dionysian Mysteries had a ton of female followers, the Maenads they were called, the wild women, which is very cool. And again, Dionysus being this androgynous figure, very cool, and it being about the experience. And you can thank the Dionysian Mysteries for theater and concerts. Theater and concerts developed because of the Dionysian Mysteries. And if you kind of think about it, imagine going to a rock concert. A rock concert is very similar in a certain way. There's a lot of intoxicants being done. There's, say there's some mosh pits, there's, kind of violence, people, sexual acts while music is playing, and dance, combining all these sensuous elements together. Modern day sort of rock concerts are a throwback to the ancient Dionysian Mysteries. So as you can see, I just want to point out that we do not consider these things perverted or whatnot. No, it's a beautiful part of life and experience, and important, very, very important. So I want to emphasize that, though we are reading from Manly P. Hall, and he does have a lot of good information, he does 100% does not reflect our mindset, and in many cases has the opposite mindset, such as the sheep and shepherd. No, we are the wolves, and this, idea of the Bacchanalia and the Dionysian Mysteries being somehow perverted, which is absolute BS. That's old world order mindset. So, he says indescribable practices, such as the Bacchanalia, were introduced and perversion ruled supreme. BS. Anyway, for no institution can be any better than the members of which it is composed. In despair, and I just want to, especially Freemasonry is a very masculine, male-dominated fraternity, whereas the Dionysian Mysteries were, men could be a part of the Dionysian Mysteries, absolutely. It just happened to be, lots of women were involved and had this androgynous character. And Friedrich Nietzsche, was a huge proponent of Dionysus, the god that represented the Dionysian Mysteries. And he actually was going to write a book called Against the Crucified, Dionysus Against the Crucified, where he sought to replace Christ with Dionysus, that Christ should be replaced with Dionysus. And that's beautiful. He never got to write the book, unfortunately. He ended up, at some point in his later life, he lost his mind, and he had to go to, and eventually died before he could write this book, which would have been fantastic. I would have loved to have read it. Which was going to be about that Dionysus was to replace Christ. Dionysus I think it was going to be called Against the Crucified or something like this. Dionysus Against the Crucified. So you can see that, again, in the last time we talked, Manly P. Hall had a very negative view of Nietzsche. So you see, we do not. Nietzsche's absolutely fantastic. He's not the end-all and be-all, but he's hugely important, just like Hegel is hugely important. Remember, in Hyperianism, we synthesize, sublate, and elevate all these ideas together to reach the highest truth. So, in despair, the few who were sought to preserve the secret doctrines from oblivion. In some cases, they succeeded, but more often, the arcanum was lost, and only the empty shell of the mysteries remained. Thomas Taylor has written, "Man is naturally a religious animal. From the earliest dawning of his consciousness, man has worshipped and revered things as symbolic of the invisible, omnipresent, indescribable thing, concerning which he could discover practically nothing. The pagan mysteries opposed the Christians during the early centuries of their church, declaring that the new faith, Christianity, did not demand virtue and integrity as requisites for salvation. Celsus expressed himself on the subject in the following caustic terms. That I do not, however, accuse the Christians more bitterly than truth compels may be conjectured from hence, that the criers who call men to other mysteries proclaim as follows. Let him approach whose hands are pure and whose words are wise, and again others proclaim, let him approach who is pure from all wickedness, whose soul is not conscious of any evil, and who leads a just and upright life. And these things are proclaimed by those who promise a purification from error. Let us now hear who those are called to the Christian mysteries. Whoever, in short, is miserable, him the kingdom of God will receive. Do you not therefore call a sinner an unjust man, a thief, a housebreaker, a wizard, one who is sacrilegious, and a robber? What other persons would the crier nominate, who should call robbers together? So it was not the true faith of the early Christian mystics that Celsus attacked, but the false forms that were creeping in even during his day. The ideals of early Christianity were based upon the high moral standards of the pagan mysteries. Okay, so I'm going to say this again. Early Christianity were based upon the high moral standards of the Pagan Mysteries, and the first Christians who met under the city of Rome used as their places of worship the subterranean temples of Mithras, from whose cult has been borrowed much of the modern church. The ancient philosophers believed that no man could live intelligently who did not have a fundamental knowledge of nature and her laws. I just want to say real quick, if you want to know about a positive version of Christianity, look at Gnosticism. Gnosticism is a positive version of Christianity that is, the complete opposite of mainstream religion, of mainstream Christianity. Mainstream Christians have and currently consider Gnostics to be heretics and blasphemers, because the Gnostics look at the God of the Old Testament, Yaldabaoth, as an evil entity that traps souls here, and looks at Jesus Christ as a helper and a spiritual entity to get others to realize their own gnosis and their own divinity, to awaken the divine spark within. So Gnosticism is a huge improvement, but we are 100% opposed to mainstream religious doctrines. So the ancient philosophers believed that no man could live intelligently who did not have a fundamental knowledge of nature and her laws. Before man can obey, he must understand, and the mysteries were devoted to instructing man concerning the operation of divine law in the terrestrial sphere. Few of the early cults actually worshipped anthropomorphic deities, although their symbolism might lead one to believe that they did. They were moralistic rather than religionistic, philosophic rather than theologic. They taught man to use his faculties more intelligently, to be patient in the face of adversity, to be courageous when confronted by danger, to be true in the midst of temptation, and most of all, to view a worthy life as the most acceptable sacrifice to God and his body as an altar sacred to the deity. Sun worship played an important part in nearly all the early pagan mysteries. This indicates the probability of their Atlantean origin, for the people of Atlantis were sun worshippers. The solar deity was usually personified as a beautiful youth with long golden hair to symbolize the rays of the sun. This golden sun god was slain by wicked ruffians who personified the evil principle of the universe. By means of certain rituals and ceremonies, symbolic of purification and regeneration, the wonderful god of good was brought back to life and became the savior of his people. Now I want you to look here and say, do you see the similarity between the ancient pagan symbols and Christian symbols? Christ, the Son of God, dying on the cross, being killed, and then becoming the Savior, right? Now, how similar is this to the solar deity, this golden sun god, slain by wicked ruffians, personifying evil principles of the universe, and then this wonderful God of good was brought back to life and became the savior of his people. So do you see this common theme in the pagan, mysteries, talking about the sun god slain by wicked ruffians and coming back to life? And then you have the Son of God, Jesus Christ, being slain, crucified, and coming back to life and being the savior. So do you see how this attempt to symbolically to communicate certain things, but the huge danger comes when people start taking these things literally. When people start taking these things literally, and you have a big problem. So the secret processes whereby he was resurrected symbolized those cultures by means of which man is able to overcome his lower nature, master his appetites, and give expression to the higher side of himself. The mysteries were organized for the purpose of assisting the struggling human creature to reawaken the spiritual powers which surrounded by the flaming ring of lust and degeneracy, lay asleep within his soul. In other words, man was offered a way by which he could regain his lost estate. So, do you see? So look, I just want to emphasize here, you have the story of a solar deity personified as a beautiful youth that was slain by wicked ruffians, and then certain rituals were used to bring this deity back to life and then becoming the savior of the people. Now, do you see how the average mundane person would take this literal? They would think, oh wow, the sun god was killed, oh no, but then he was if I do this ritual, he came back to life and he was the savior. And people take this, that's the exoteric. This is the story that the masses would receive and take as literal, for example. But then you have the esoteric hidden meaning, where you understand that the sun god was slain by wicked ruffians, and the wicked ruffians personified, symbolically represented evil principles of the universe, and the resurrection symbolized the way in which man is able to overcome his lower nature, master his appetites and his instincts, and give expression to the higher side of himself. And it was organized for the purpose of assisting the struggling human creature to reawaken the spiritual powers. So, do you see how it's completely different? You have this representation of sort of truth being slain by evil principles, and then doing these things to overcome your lower nature, to tap into your higher nature. And this is the secret hidden meaning behind the exoteric meaning. But do you see how you can have one person or two people reading the story and come to completely different conclusions? You can have one person who takes the symbolic meaning and uses it to transform themselves, and then another person who will take it literal and become a sun worshiper. And then now you have a harmful religion. In the ancient world, nearly all the secret societies were philosophic and religious. During the medieval centuries, they were chiefly religious and political, although a few philosophical schools remained. In modern times, secret societies are largely political or fraternal, although in a few of them, as in Masonry, the ancient religious and philosophical principles still survive. Space prohibits a detailed discussion of the secret schools. There were literally scores of these ancient cults, with branches in all parts of the Eastern and Western worlds. Some, such as those of Pythagoras and the Hermetists, show a decided Oriental influence, while the Rosicrucians, according to their own proclamations, gained much of their wisdom from the Arabian mystics. Although the mystery schools are usually associated with civilization, there is evidence that the most uncivilized people of prehistoric times had a knowledge of them. Natives of distant islands, many in the lowest forms, have mystic rituals and secret practices which, although primitive, are of a decided Masonic tinge. The Druidic Mysteries. The original and primitive inhabitants of Britain, at some remote period, this seems to be a quote, by the way. The original and primitive inhabitants of Britain at some remote period revived and reformed their national institutes. Their priest or instructor had hitherto been simply named Gwyd, but it was considered to have become necessary to divide this office between the national or superior priest and another whose influence would be more limited. From henceforth, the former became Derwyd, Druid, or superior instructor, and the latter Gowyd, or Ovid, Ovate, subordinate instructor, and both went by the general name of Byrd, or bards, or teachers of wisdom. As the system matured and augmented, the bardic order consisted of three classes: the Druids, Byrd Braints, or privileged bards, and Ovates. And you'll have to forgive my pronunciation if it's not entirely correct. The origin of the word druid is under dispute. Max Mueller believes that, like the Irish word drui, it means the men of the oak trees. He further draws attention to the fact that the forest gods and tree deities of the Greeks were called dryads. Some believe the word to be of Teutonic origin, others ascribe it to the Welsh. A few trace it to the Gaelic druid, which means a wise man or sorcerer. In Sanskrit, the word dru means timber. At the time of Roman conquest, the Druids were thoroughly ensconced in Britain and Gaul. Their power over the people was unquestioned, and there were instances in which armies about to attack each other sheathed their swords when ordered to do so by the white-robed Druids. No undertaking of great importance was scattered without the assistance of these patriarchs, who stood as mediators between the gods and men. The Druidic order is deservedly credited with having a deep understanding of nature and her laws. The Encyclopedia Britannica states that the geography, physical science, natural theology, and astrology were their favorite studies. The Druids had a fundamental knowledge of medicine, especially the use of herbs and simples. Crude surgical instruments also have been found in England and Ireland. An odd treatise on early British medicine states that every practitioner was expected to have a garden or backyard for the growing of certain herbs necessary to his profession. Eliphas Levi, the celebrated transcendentalist, makes the following significant statement. The Druids were priests and physicians, curing by magnetism and charging amulets with their fluidic influence. Their universal remedies were mistletoe and serpent's eggs, because these substances attract the astral light in a special manner. The solemnity with which mistletoe was cut down and drew upon this plant the popular confidence and rendered it powerfully magnetic. The progress of magnetism will someday reveal to us the absorbing properties of mistletoe. We shall then understand the secret of those spongy growths which drew the unused virtues of plants and became surcharged with tinctures and savors. Mushrooms, truffles, gall on trees, and the different kinds of mistletoe will be employed with understanding by medicinal science, which will be new because it is old, but one must not move quicker than science, which recedes that it may advance the further. So not only was the mistletoe sacred as symbolic of the universal medicine or panacea, but also because of the fact that it grew upon the oak tree. Through the symbol of the oak, the Druids worshipped the supreme deity. Therefore, anything growing upon that tree was sacred to him. At certain seasons, according to the positions of the sun, moon, and stars, the archdruid climbed the oak tree and cut the mistletoe with a golden sickle concentrated for that service. The parasitic growth was caught in white cloths provided for the purpose, lest it touch the earth and be polluted by terrestrial vibrations. Usually a sacrifice of a white bull was made under the tree. The Druids were initiates of a secret school that existed in their midst. The school, which closely resembled the Bacchic and Eleusinian mysteries of Greece, or the Egyptian rites of Isis and Osiris, is justly designated the Druidic Mysteries. There has been much speculation concerning the secret wisdom that the Druids claimed to possess. Their secret teachings were never written, but were communicated orally to specially prepared candidates. Robert Brown, 32 Degrees, is of the opinion that the British priests secured their information from Tyrian and Phoenician navigators, who, thousands of years before the Christian era, established colonies in Britain and Gaul, while searching for tin. Thomas Maurice, in his Indian Antiquities, discourses at length on Phoenician, Carthaginian, and Greek expeditions to the British Isles for the purpose of procuring tin. Others are of the opinion that the mysteries, as celebrated by the Druids, were of Oriental origin, possibly Buddhistic. The proximity of the British Isles to the lost Atlantis may account for the sun worship, which plays an important part in the rituals of Druidism. According to Artemidorus, Ceres and Persephone were worshipped on an island close to Britain, with rites and ceremonies similar to those of Samothrace. There is no doubt that the Druidic pantheon includes a large number of Greek and Roman deities. This greatly amazed Caesar during his conquest of Britain and Gaul, and caused him to affirm that these tribes adored Mercury, Apollo, Mars, and Jupiter, in a manner similar to that of the Latin countries. It is almost certain that the Druidic Mysteries were not indigenous to Britain or Gaul, but migrated from one of the more ancient civilizations. The school of the Druids was divided into three distinct parts, and the secret teachings embodied therein are practically the same as the mysteries concealed under the allegories of Blue Lodge Freemasonry. The lowest of the three divisions was the Ovate, or Ovid. This was an honorary degree, requiring no special purification or preparation. The Ovates dressed in green, the Druidic color of learning, and were expected to know something about medicine, astronomy, poetry if possible, and sometimes music. An Ovate was an individual admitted to the Druidic order because of his general excellence and superior knowledge concerning the problems of life. Now, I want you to notice here that in these mystery schools, like the Druidic Mysteries or whatnot, do you notice how there are sort of different levels? And it resembles a school and a system of education that elevates one to a certain level. Now compare that to most mainstream religions, like mainstream Christianity or whatnot. There's no system of learning, really. It's not like an education system. You just go, you're told what to believe, and then you just believe it. Have faith in Christ, follow this list of commandments, and you're good. Whereas in these mystery schools, it was a school, a system of learning. And I want to emphasize that, so in Hyperianism, now in Hyperianism, we are not a secret society. We want to bring this information to the world. However, we reflect the idea of having a system of education. You have to, to understand, ontological mathematics. You have to understand the philosophy. You have to understand many different aspects of Hyperianism, etc. And there are many different things to work on. We have interstar actualization, which has to do with integrating the psyche and incorporating Jungian individuation and hemispheric integration. And Hyperianism is a great school of learning. And it's about education. It's a revolution of consciousness to elevate the individual to become Hyperion and to achieve absolute awareness, absolute consciousness, where you have the triadic perspective of absolute, monadic, and avatar. And so it's really important to realize, again, it's funny when you have people, sort of come in and go, oh, well, tell me everything that Hyperionism is about right now. And it's funny because it's not a simplistic faith like Christianity. You say, oh yeah, well in Christianity, all you have to do is believe in Jesus and accept him as Lord and Savior and follow the rules, and that's what Christianity is about. Hyperionism is nothing like that, right? So when people come in and they start criticizing Hyperionism and trying to talk about it when they don't even know what it is, it would be like someone who has never studied physics or has no knowledge of physics or mathematics whatsoever coming in and saying, oh, tell me what quantum mechanics is about. It's like, well, you have to go through this system of learning, this school, this system of education. You have to know about physics, you have to know about mathematics, you have to know about electromagnetism, you have to know about classical physics before you can start to understand what quantum mechanics is. Well, likewise with Hyperionism, it's a system of education, it's a system of learning. And, this in the future, this will be what is taught in all the schools throughout the world. So it's important to realize that Hyperionism is a very advanced system that condenses hundreds of lifetimes of knowledge into one if you study it properly. And so it's a very advanced system. And so two things. First of all, don't ever feel discouraged if it feels like this is a lot of information. It is. Take your time with it, though. This is a journey of a lifetime. And don't be discouraged. Just continue to go at it and learn the information. And the second thing to remember is when you get these haters that think that they can just criticize Hyperionism, can criticize ontological mathematics, and criticize interstar actualization without having even ever studied it or watching 1 or 2 videos is absurd. So keep that in mind. We are not like a faith-based system where you just come in and it's like, oh, here's what we're about. This is a system of education literally to bring you to the next level of consciousness. And that's not hyperbole, that's not flowery language. Literally, to bring you from self-awareness to an absolute awareness. Absolute awareness, and so that you can have the triadic view of absolute, monadic, and avatar. This is crucial to rationally understand this. To rationally understand this is critical, and it's a system of education, a system of learning. Okay, so we talked about, so we're just, anyway. So you had the lowest of the 3 divisions. They wore green to symbolize learning. And do you see how the symbolism is very, very cool when it's not taken to a toxic level. So incorporating wearing green to symbolize learning, that's super cool. Okay, that's amazing. So this level was all about learning, music, medicine, astronomy, poetry. Admitted to the Druidic order because of his general excellence and superior knowledge concerning the problems of life. So you started off in this first level, which was all about learning. And then the second division was that of the Bard. Its members were robed in sky blue to represent harmony and truth. And to them was assigned the labor of memorizing, at least in part, the 20,000 verses of Druidic sacred poetry. They were often pictured with the primitive British or Irish harp, an instrument strung with human hair and having as many strings as there were ribs on one side of the human body. These bards were often chosen as teachers of candidates seeking entrance into the Druidic Mysteries. Neophytes were striped with robes of blue, green, and white, these being the 3 sacred colors of the Druidic order. So now you have, the second division. They wore blue, representing truth and knowledge, and they had things to memorize, and then they became teachers. So do you see first, you have the first area, which are learners, and then the second division are teachers. And guess what? In Hyperionism, right now, we have a lot of people at the learning level, and that's fantastic. That's great, but we want people to become so knowledgeable that they can become teachers, And right now you can see a few of our teachers in the Hyperion Source. The Hyperion Source is a great YouTube channel. Look them up on YouTube to see some excellent Hyperion teachers. But we want more, so put in that work to learn and understand our material, and then so that we can now have more teachers. And that's going to become really necessary in the future once the pandemic is over and we can start having Hyperion locations around the world. We're going to need a lot of teachers to be able to be taking part in these Hyperion locations. So yeah, make sure you are studying. Okay, so you had the first division, which were learners, and the second division, first division clothed in green, they were learners. Second division clothed in blue, representing harmony and truth, and they were the teachers. And the third division was that of the Druid. In particular, its labor was to minister to the religious needs of the people. To reach this dignity, the candidate must first become a bard, braint. The Druids always dressed in white, symbolic of their purity and the color used by them to symbolize the sun. In order to reach the exalted position of Archdruid, or spiritual head of the organization, it was necessary for a priest to pass through the 6 successive degrees of the Druidic order. The members of these different degrees was differentiated by the colors of their sashes, for all of them wore robes of white. Some writers are of the opinion that the title of Archdruid was hereditary, descending from father to son, but it is more probable that the honor was conferred by ballot election. Its recipient was chosen for his virtues and integrity from the most learned members of the higher Druidic degrees. So again, remember, we're looking at the ancient history of secret societies, and here we have one of these very early secret societies, this Druidic order, and but you can see how it's about different degrees, levels of learning, and an education system, and it's highly symbolic as well. The colors that they would wear. There's nothing wrong with symbolism. Symbolism is awesome. Hey, I wear symbolism right now. I mean, the symbolism of the Hyperion triad, symbolism of the dialectic, opposite forces combining to create higher synthesis and drive the evolution of existence. Nothing wrong with symbolism as long as it's not taken to a toxic level, as mainstream religion does, where mainstream religion is just symbolism is taken as literal, and then you get let's say people worshiping snakes instead of realizing that it's a symbol for the dialectic or something like this. You'll get people like running around with, oh look, these snakes won't poison me because I have faith in God, or you know what I mean. Just like you see where it can be taken to a dangerous extent. Nothing wrong with symbolism and ritual as long as they are realized to represent something higher. As long as you have the esoteric knowledge that it represents something higher and not exoterically taking it to be truth, then it's okay. But understanding reality through reason and logic, though, is the highest. You can only get so far with symbols, and symbols are dangerous at a certain level. So it's about reaching the highest level of understanding can only be reached through logic and reason, as the great philosopher Hegel understood. Now, but we can see how these secret societies now operate in a symbolic way with levels and degrees and whatnot. And just to emphasize once again, Hyperionism is not a secret society. However, we want to bring the knowledge to the world, to everyone, to make what was once secret available to all, to everybody. But we do very much have this education system. It's not something that you can just show up at the door, knock, knock, knock. Hey, what's Hyperionism? Tell me all of it right now, just like you can kind of do with mainstream religion. You can say what Hyperionism is about. It's about creating a new humanity and a new earth, led by logic and reason. But there's a lot more to it than that. And it, incorporates, this is the most monumental knowledge system in existence. So it needs that, level of education. So, according to James Gardner, there was usually two archdruids in Britain, one residing on the Isle of Anglesea, the other on the Isle of Man. Presumably, there were others in Gaul. These dignitaries generally carried golden scepters and were crowned with wreaths of oak leaves, symbolic of their authority. The younger members of the Druidic order were clean-shaven and modestly dressed, but the most aged had long gray beards and wore magnificent golden ornaments. The educational system of the Druids in Britain was superior to that of their colleagues on the continent, and consequently many of the Gaelic youths were sent to the Druidic colleges in Britain for the philosophic instruction and training. Eliphas Levi states that the Druids lived in strict abstinence, studied the natural sciences, preserved the deepest secrecy, and admitted new members only after long probationary periods. Many of the priests of the order lived in buildings not unlike the monasteries of the modern world. They were associated in groups, like ascetics of the Far East. Although celibacy was not demanded of them, few married. Many of the Druids retired from the world and lived as recluses in caves, in rough stone houses, or in little shacks built in the depths of a forest. Here they prayed and medicated, emerging only to perform their religious duties. James Freeman Clarke, in his 10 Great Religions, described the beliefs of the Druids as follows. The Druids believed in 3 worlds and in transmigration from one to the other. Transmigration can also mean reincarnation. In a world above, so they believed in a world above this in which happiness predominated, a world below of misery, and this present state. Yeah, do you see kind of a reference to heaven, hell, and earth? This transmigration was to punish and reward, and also to purify the soul. In the present world, said they, good and evil are so exactly balanced that man has the utmost freedom, and is able to choose or reject either. The Welsh triads tell us there are 3 objects of metempsychosis: to collect into the soul the properties of all being, to acquire knowledge of all things, and to get power to conquer evil. There are also, they say, 3 kinds of knowledge: knowledge of the nature of each thing, of its cause and its influence. There are 3 things which continually grow less: darkness, falsehood, and death. There are 3 which constantly increase: light, life, and truth. Like nearly all schools of the mysteries, the teachings of the Druids were divided into 2 distinct sections. The simpler, a moral code, was taught to all the people, while the deeper, esoteric doctrine was given only to initiated priests. So again, do you see how there's these 2 versions, right? A simple story version given to the masses, and a deep secret version which only was given to a select few. And here's where the big danger comes in, right? Because you see what they were trying to do was be like, all right, first of all, well, the people are too stupid to understand, so let's give them a simple story, and we'll reserve the real teachings for the initiates. And this is where Hyperianism wants to do away with this. We want everyone to be able to be elevated into true knowledge. And now, while of course there are some people that are going to become more educated than others within the Hyperion system, we don't want to give these toxic versions, these religious versions, right? We don't want to give these things that will develop into like an toxic mainstream religion. It's a system of education. And this is why we don't like the shepherd and sheep mentality that these negative, sort of secret societies have, but the wolf and pack mentality. So instead of shepherd and sheep, we want wolf and pack. Strong, independent individuals operating within a collective. So to be admitted to the order, a candidate was required to be of good family and of high moral character. No important secrets were entrusted to him until he had been tempted in many ways and his strength of character severely tried. The Druids taught the people of Britain and Gaul concerning the immortality of the soul. They believed in transmigration and apparently in reincarnation. They borrowed in one life, promising to pay back in the next. They believed in a purgatorial type of hell where they would be purged of their sins, afterwards passing on to the happiness of unity with the gods. The Druids taught that all men would be saved, but that some must return to earth many times to learn the lessons of human life and to overcome the inherent evil of their own natures. Before a candidate was entrusted with the secret doctrines of the Druids, he was bound with a vow of secrecy. Those doctrines were imparted only in the depths of forests and in the darkness of caves. In these places, far from the haunts of men, the neophyte was instructed concerning the creation of the universe, the personality of the gods, the law of nature, the secrets of occult medicine, the mysteries of the celestial bodies, and the rudiments of magic and sorcery. The Druids had a great number of feast days. The new and full moon and the 6th day of the moon were sacred periods. It is believed that initiations took place at the 2 solstices and the 2 equinoxes. At dawn of the 25th day of December, the birth of the sun god was celebrated. Again, do you see the hilarious similarity here? At dawn, the 25th of December, the birth of the sun god was celebrated. Does that sound familiar? Does that sound familiar about the birth of the Son of God celebrated on Christmas? Also, the obsession the Druids had with mistletoe and long beards, clothed in robes and things like this. Does that also sound familiar? The secret teachings of the Druids are said to be tinctured with Pythagorean philosophy. The Druids had a Madonna, or Virgin Mother, with a child in her arms. Are you seeing the similarities. They had a virgin mother with a child in her arms who was sacred to their mysteries, and their sun god was resurrected at the time of the year corresponding to that at which modern Christians celebrate Easter. So again, at the time of the year when Christians celebrate Easter, when Christ was resurrected, that is when the Druids celebrated their sun god's resurrection. According to Manly P. Hall here. Both the cross and the serpent were sacred to the Druids, who made the former by cutting off all the branches of an oak tree and fastening one of them to the main trunk in the form of the letter T. This oaken cross became symbolic of their superior deity. They also worshipped the sun, moon, and stars. The moon received their special veneration. Caesar stated that Mercury was one of the chief deities of the Gauls. The Druids are believed to have worshipped Mercury under the similitude of a stone cube. They also had great veneration for the nature spirits, fairies, gnomes, and undines, little creatures of the forest and river, to whom many offerings were made. Describing the temples of the Druids, Charles Heckethorn, in The Secret Societies of All Ages and Countries, says, "Their temples, wherein the sacred fire was preserved, were generally situated in dense groves of oak and assumed various forms, circular because a circle was the emblem of the universe." All right, interesting that a circle was the emblem of the universe. Remember, in Hyperianism, the importance, reality is founded on the circle. Euler's formula, Eulerian circles, the source formula. Why? Circles give rise to sinusoidal waveforms. Anytime you have a circle, what comes along with a circle? Two sinusoidal waves. Circles and sinusoidal waves are equal to each other. They're equivalent. They aren't different. They're two perspectives on the same thing. So, in allusion to the mundane egg, from which issued, according to the traditions of many nations, the universe, or according to others, our first parents. Serpentine, because a serpent was the symbol of who? The Druidic Osiris. Cruciform, because a cross is an emblem of regeneration, or winged to represent the motion of the divine spirit. Their chief deities were reducible to two, a male and a female, the great father and mother, who, and Serduen, distinguished by the same characteristics as belong to Osiris and Isis, Bacchus and Ceres, or any other supreme god and goddess, the two principles of all being. Godfrey Higgins states that Hugh, the mighty, regarded as the first settler of Britain, came from a place which the Welsh triads call the Summer Country, the present site of Constantinople. Albert Pike says that the lost word of masonry is concealed in the name of the Druid god Hugh. The meager information extant concerning the secret initiations of the Druids indicates a decided similarity between their mystery school and the schools of Greece and Egypt. Hugh, the sun god, was murdered and after a number of strange ordeals and mystic rituals was restored to life. There were 3 degrees of the Druidic Mysteries, but few successfully passed them all. The candidate was buried in a coffin, as symbolic of the death of the sun god. The supreme test, however, was being sent out to sea in an open boat. While undergoing this ordeal, many lost their lives. Taliesin, an ancient scholar who passed through the mysteries, describes the initiation of the open boat in Faber's Pagan Idolatry. The few who passed this 3rd degree were said to have been born again, and were instructed in the secret and hidden truths which the Druid priests had preserved from antiquity. From these initiates were chosen many of the dignitaries of the British religious and political world. The rites of Mithras. When the Persian mysteries immigrated into southern Europe, They were quickly assimilated by the Latin mind. The cult grew rapidly, especially among the Roman soldiery. And during the Roman wars of conquest, the teachings were carried by the legionnaires to nearly all parts of Europe. So powerful did the cult of Mithras become that at least one Roman emperor was initiated into the order, which met in caverns under the city of Rome. Concerning the spread of this mystery school through different parts of Europe, C.W. King, in his Gnostic and Their Remains, says, Mithraic bas-reliefs cut on the faces of rocks or on stone tablets still abound in the countries formerly the western provinces of the Roman Empire. Many exist in Germany, still more in France. And in this island, Britain, they have often been discovered on the line of the Picts Wall and the noted one at Bath. Alexander Wilder, in his Philosophy and Ethics, states that Mithras is the Zend title for the sun, and he is supposed to dwell within that shining orb. Mithras has a male and a female aspect, though not himself androgynous. As Mithras, he is the forward of the sun, powerful and radiant, and the most magnificent of the Yasadas, Izads, or genii of the sun. As Mithra, this deity represents the feminine principle. The mundane universe is recognized as her symbol. She represents nature as receptive and terrestrial, and as fruitful only when bathed in glory of the solar orb. The Mithraic cult is a simplification of the more elaborate teachings of Zarathustra, the Persian fire magician. According to the Persians, there coexisted in eternity two principles. The first of these, Ahura Mazda, or Ormuzd, was the spirit of good. From Ormuzd came forth a number of hierarchies of good and beautiful spirits, angels and archangels. The second of these eternally existing principles was called Ahriman. He was also a pure and beautiful spirit, but he later rebelled against Ormuzd, being jealous of his power. This did not occur, however, until after Ormuzd had created light, for previously Ahriman had not been conscious of the existence of Ormuzd. Because of his jealousy and rebellion, Ahriman became the spirit of evil. From himself, he individualized a host of destructive creatures to injure Ormuzd. Now again, does this sound very familiar? The whole idea of God and Lucifer, Lucifer the angel of light, rebelling against God, God casting Lucifer to down, Lucifer then becoming Satan, and having a host of angels become demons, right? Again, very, very similar. When Ormuzd created the earth, Ahriman entered into its grosser elements. Whenever Ormuzd did a good deed, Ahriman placed the principle of evil within it. At last, when Ormuzd created the human race, Ahriman became incarnate in the lower nature of man, so that in each personality, the spirit of good and the spirit of evil struggle for control. For 3,000 years, Ormuzd ruled the celestial worlds with light and goodness. Then he created man. For another 3,000 years, he ruled man with wisdom and integrity. Then the powers of Ahriman began, and the struggle for the soul of man continues through the next period of 3,000 years. During the fourth period of 3,000 years, the power of Ahriman will be destroyed. God will return to the world again, evil and death will be vanquished, and at last the spirit of evil will bow humbly before the throne of Ormuzd. Again, sound very familiar, second coming of Christ and all this. While Ormuzd and Ahriman are struggling for control of the human soul and for supremacy in nature, Mithras, god of intelligence, stands as mediator between the two. Many authors have noted the similarity between Mercury and Mithras. As the chemical mercury acts as a solvent, according to alchemists, so Mithras seeks to harmonize the two celestial opposites. So you would have a sort of Mithras being kind of equivalent to our conception of Abraxas, the synthesis of good and evil, above good and evil through logic and reason. The synthesis of shadow and light guided by logic and reason is our conception of Abraxas. There are many points of resemblance between Christianity and the cult of Mithras. One of the reasons for this probably is that the Persian mystics invaded Italy during the 1st century after Christ, and the early history of both cults was closely interwoven. The Encyclopedia Britannica makes the following statement concerning the Mithraic and Christian mysteries. The fraternal and democratic spirit of the first communities and their humble origin, the identification of the object of adoration with light and the sun, the legends of the shepherds with their gifts and adoration, the flood and the ark, the representation in art of the fiery chariot, the drawing of water from the rock, the use of bell and candle, holy water and communion, the sanctification of Sunday and of the 25th of December, the insistence on moral conduct, and emphasis placed on abstinence and self-control, the doctrine of heaven and hell, of primitive revelation, of the mediation of the Logos emanating from the divine, the atoning sacrifice, the constant warfare between good and evil, and the final triumph of the former, the immortality of the soul, the last judgment, the resurrection of the flesh, and the fiery destruction of the universe. These are some of the resemblances which, whether real or only apparent, enabled Mithraism to prolong its resistance to Christianity. The rites of Mithras were performed in caves. Porphyry, in his Cave of the Nymphs, states that Zarathustra was the first to consecrate a cave to the worship of God, because a cavern was symbolic of the earth, or the lower world of darkness. John P. Lundy, in his Monumental Christianity, describes the cave of Mithras as follows. But this cave was adorned with the signs of the zodiac, Cancer and Capricorn. The summer and winter solstices were chiefly conspicuous as the gates of souls descended into this life, or passing out of it in their ascent to the gods, Cancer being the gate of descent, and Capricorn of ascent. These are the two avenues of the immortals passing up and down from earth to heaven, and from heaven to earth. The so-called chair of St. Peter in Rome was believed to have been used in one of the pagan mysteries, possibly that of Mithras, in which subterranean grottos of the Christian mysteries met in the early days of their faith. The votaries of the Christian mysteries met in the early days of their faith. In Ancalypsis, Godfrey Higgins writes that in 1662, while cleaning this sacred chair of Barjonas, the 12 labors of Hercules were discovered upon it, and later the French discovered upon the same chair the Mohammedan Confessions of Faith written in Arabic. Initiations into the rites of Mithras, like initiation into many other ancient schools of philosophy, apparently consisted of 3 important degrees. Preparation of these degrees consisted of self-purification, the building up of the intellectual powers, and the control of the animal nature. And you'll notice this very, very common theme in working on the intellect and overcoming, sort of the animalistic behavior. And in Hyperianism, it's similar. We highly emphasize the cultivation of the intellect and understanding, knowing what existence is. But an important difference is when it comes to the animalistic nature, we don't deny them. We don't deny the shadow. We don't deny the id. We allow ourselves to experience it, but in a controlled and healthy way. So the thing is that yes, your animalistic desire, it's like an animal. It's the shadow. It's like a demon. And the more you deny it, the stronger it grows. So truly, to overcome your animalistic desires is not to deny them, but to partake in them, as long as you do so in a healthy way, guided by logic and reason, and you don't allow it to overcome and overtake your life. It's about satiating your desires. And this is why we have no problem with Dionysus. Life is about experience. And yes, we do have animalistic desires, but there's nothing wrong with engaging in the animalistic from time to time. We are here to learn, experience, and grow. So we are here to understand what existence is, where we are, what we are, why we're here. So it's incredibly important to work on logic and reason. But we also want to enjoy life, and partaking in these animalistic avenues of life is nothing to be ashamed of. We don't deny our shadow. Remember, we're not love and lighters. We embrace the light and the dark, the shadow and the light. We are Abraxian, guided by logic and reason. So there's nothing wrong with, indulgence. There is nothing wrong with indulgence and partaking in the animalistic nature, as long, again, as it is guided by logic and reason and done in a healthy manner. Remember, I can't emphasize this enough. We are not love and lighters. We are both of the light and the dark, the light and the shadow. We are Abraxian. We are guided by logic and reason and have integrated our light and dark selves together. So, in the first degree, the candidate was given a crown upon the point of a sword and instructed in the mysteries of Mithras' hidden power. Probably he was taught that the golden crown represented his own spiritual nature, which must be objectified and unfolded before he could truly glorify Mithras. Do you see the power and symbolism? A golden crown representing the spiritual nature. For Mithras was his own soul, standing as mediator between Ormuzd, his spirit, and Ahriman, his animal nature. So you have, again, do you see how the masses would just take this as a story? Oh, there's Mithras, and he stands between, Ormuzd and Ahriman, and they're both, Ormuzd created the earth, and Ahriman is evil, and they fight each other, and, they just take it as story. They take it as truth. But here, you see, for the initiates, Mithras is your own soul, and you stand as a mediator between Ormuzd and Ahriman. Ormuzd representing, the light, and Ahriman representing the darkness, but these are your own nature. This is in your nature, and so your soul, and you can see this in Freudian terms as sort of the id, the ego, and the superego. The ego stands as mediator between the superego and the id, and in Jungian terms, you have sort of the ego and the higher self and the shadow self. But so you can see that in this, Mithras is you as the soul, mediating between light and dark forces that exist within you. And again, do you see the big difference between symbolism, where the masses would just take this as a story? But do you see where that gets dangerous? Do you see where that gets very, very dangerous? Because then, oh, yeah, sure, let's go have wars in the name of Ormuzd or something. I'm not saying this actually happened, but in the case of, let's say Christianity or something, and these other dangerous religions, that did happen. So, in the first degree, he was given the golden crown representing his own spiritual nature, which must be objectified and unfolded before he could truly glorify Mithras. For Mithras was his own soul, standing as mediator between Ormuzd, his spirit, and Ahriman, his animal nature. In the second degree, he was given the armor of intelligence and purity and sent into the darkness of subterranean pits to fight the beasts of lust, passion, and degeneracy. Now, okay, so again, you're giving the armor, which represents cultivating your intelligence and fighting against the beasts of lust and passion and degeneracy. Now, I want to, again, emphasize in Hyperianism, we don't see anything wrong with lust and passion. These are not animals to be destroyed. These are not things to deny, but rather to just not let them take over your life. There is nothing wrong with sex. There is nothing wrong with lust. There is nothing wrong with these things. But, as long as they are indulged in a healthy way. There are so many problems in this world because of shadow repression and repressing your sexual urges. This leads to so many problems. I mean, look at all these terrorists, terrorism, you are taught they're taught, to deny lust, to deny their passions, to deny sex. But then if they die in holy war, that they're going to go to heaven with 70 odd virgins, and the 72 virgins, and you see this exploitation that occurs. So anyway, I just want to emphasize that within Hyperianism, we're about light and darkness synthesized. There's nothing wrong with lust. There's nothing wrong with sex, as long as everything is consensual, everything is safe, and it's led by logic and reason. Okay? Nothing wrong with it. Nothing at all. So, you just don't want it to control your life. That's a big difference. You can become what's known as shadow possessed. But shadow possession will still occur if you try and deny the shadow. It'll wreak havoc on your life. Check out all my videos on the shadow self. Look at my videos on inner star actualization. I have a whole playlist that talks about your shadow self, your mirror self, your power self, and your higher self. Check out my playlist called Inner Star Actualization. Very important. Anyway, so in the first degree, he was given crown, representing his soul. In the second degree, he's given the armor, which represents intelligence. In the third degree, he was given a cape, upon which were drawn or woven the signs of the zodiac and other astronomical symbols. After his initiations were over, he was hailed as one who had risen from the dead, was instructed in the secret teachings of the Persian mystics, and became a full-fledged member of the order. Candidates who successfully passed the Mithraic initiations were called lions and were marked upon their foreheads with the Egyptian cross. Mithras himself is often pictured with the head of a lion and 2 pairs of wings. Throughout the entire ritual were repeated references to the birth of Mithras as the sun god, his sacrifice for man, his death that men might have eternal life, and lastly his resurrection and saving of all humanity by his intercession before the throne of Ormuzd. While the court of Mithras did not reach the philosophical heights attained by Zarathustra, I actually bit my tongue attempting to say Zarathustra. Great book by Nietzsche, by the way, Thus Spake Zarathustra. Anyway, while the cult of Mithras did not reach the philosophical heights attained by Zarathustra, its effect upon the civilization of the Western world was far-reaching, for at one time nearly all Europe was converted to its doctrines. Rome, in her intercourse with other nations, inoculated them with her religious principles, and many later institutions have exhibited Mithraic culture. The reference to the lion and the grip of the lion's paw in the Master Mason's degree have a strong Mithraic tinge and may easily have originated from this cult. A ladder of 7 rungs appears in the Mithraic initiation. Faber is of the opinion that this ladder was originally a pyramid of 7 steps. It is possible that the Masonic ladder with 7 rungs had its origin in this Mithraic symbol. Women were never permitted to enter the Mithraic order, which is bullshit. Women were never permitted to enter the Mithraic order, but children of the male sex were initiates long before they reached maturity. The refusal to permit women to join the Masonic order may be based on the esoteric reason given in the secret instructions of the Mithraics. Again, do you see this? Do you see how now we have inherent, sexism built into this? So do you see the old world controller mindset that comes with some of these secret societies? Not letting women join, this sheep and shepherd mentality. It's gross. It's gross. Anyway. I just want to emphasize that, once again, we're reading this to learn this history. Just don't take this to mean that Hyperianism agrees with all this, because it most certainly doesn't. And I'm pointing out when it does. I just want to keep reminding you, okay? The refusal to permit women to join the Masonic order may be based on the esoteric reason given in the secret instructions of the Mithraics. This cult is another excellent example of those secret societies whose legends are largely symbolic representations of the sun and his journey through the houses of the heavens. Mithras, rising from a stone, is merely the sun rising over the horizon, or as the ancients supposed, out of the horizon at the vernal equinox. John O'Neill disputes the theory that Mithras was intended as a solar deity. In The Night of the Gods, he writes, "The Avestan Mithra, the Yetzirah of light, has 10,000 eyes, high with full knowledge, strong, sleepless, and ever awake. The supreme god of Ahura Mazda also has one eye, or else it is said that with his eyes, the sun, moon, and stars, he sees everything." The theory that the theory that Mithra was originally a title of the supreme heavens god putting the sun out of court is the only one that answers all requirements. It will be evident that here we have origins in the abundance for the Freemason's eye. Now you can see here, now we're getting a very, very interesting similarity between Abraxas. Abraxas is the absolute, all reality. It's what you and I are when considered as a collective. It is us. We are the absolute, and we are Abraxas. The 10,000 eyes, high, full with knowledge, strong and sleepless, and ever awake. It sees all, right? With one eye, or else it says that the eyes are the sun, the moon, and the stars, and it sees everything. The absolute Abraxas is all reality. Its eyes are the sun, the moon, and the stars, everything. Its eyes are your eyes and my eyes. And Abraxas becomes conscious when we realize that we are Abraxas, when we realize that we are the absolute. And that's what Hyperianism intends to do, is to educate the world into absolute awareness and to literally actualize the consciousness of God on earth. That is what we are here to do, literally, to actualize the consciousness of God on earth. We are the opening of the great eye, the sleepless eye, the 10,000 eyes, the eyes of the sun, the moon, and the stars. We are all reality. We are the absolute. And through us, the absolute becomes conscious of itself, through the highest Hyperions who have attained absolute awareness. Fully, we are the consciousness of God. We are God on earth, God awakened, here now in the flesh, God in the flesh. That is us. We worship no Christs because we are the Christ. We worship no God because we are the God. We are God incarnate. And that's why we seek to create a divine society. Are you beginning to connect the dots, put everything together? We literally want to create a society of the divine. Not hyperbole, not symbolically. We are the absolute. And we want to awaken the consciousness of God and create the earth into a fully awakened planet. And here we begin. Here we begin. We are the first to initiate this global process. The Mithraic rites superseded the mysteries of Bacchus and became the foundation of the Gnostic system, which for many centuries prevailed in Asia, Egypt, and even the remote West. Mithras was born out of a rock, which breaking open permitted him to emerge. This occurred in the darkness of a subterranean chamber. The Church of the Nativity at Bethlehem confirms the theory that Jesus was born in a grotto or cave. According to Dupuis, Mithras was put to death by crucifixion and rose again on the third day. And this concludes the first part of the ancient mysteries and the hidden history of secret societies. Remember, we have a lot to get to. We are barely getting started with the hidden history of secret societies. And we are going to continue reading about the hidden history of ancient secret societies. But I hope you guys are starting to see the big picture here about secret societies are about hiding messages and secrets within symbolism. And what Hyperianism intends to do. What you will find in Hyperianism is information that you will find in no secret society. We are the highest, okay? With our systems of knowledge and reason, we are the pinnacle of information. You know, it doesn't matter. You go join the Rosicrucians if you want. You go join the Freemasons if you want. You go join the Golden Dawn if you want. Go ahead. You won't find anything in there that comes close to what we are bringing to the world now. We are the divine consciousness of the absolute here on earth, and we are not here to hide this information. We are here to shine this information like rays of the sun to illuminate the world and bring the rest of the inhabitants of this planet into divine consciousness, into absolute consciousness as we wake up the world. So, here's the first section on the hidden history of ancient secret societies, and we will be continuing to the next part, which is three parts in total, and we will be doing that very soon.